Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another session on developing and integrating applications with the Microsoft Identity Platform, which is how we like to call the Azure Active Directory for Developer product line of ours. This is going to be another loaded session about how to develop multi-tenant applications. We will cover all the aspects beyond the basics that we generally cover in our documentations and samples, and give you enough advice so that you can successfully develop, deploy, provision, and configure your applications in the tenants of multiple customers of Azure. So my name is Kalyan Krishna. I am a Senior Program Manager in the Azure Active Directory team. Me and Stephen basically are responsible for interacting with the various developer platforms and channels that we have out there to enable developers to develop and integrate applications with our platform. So in general, in this session, I will cover the following topics. I will briefly touch what tenancy is in Azure and Azure Active Directory. This is a fairly common topic, and I believe most people are already aware of what a tenant is in Azure Active Directory. I will cover application and service principles, which are the basic building blocks that you should be very familiar with if you are building applications that will be provisioned and used by multiple Azure AD tenants. Then we will cover the various types of applications and how do you make them multi-tenant, starting with applications that sign in users, then talking about web APIs, and finally how headless or daemon or service applications can be made multi-tenant. Then we will cover a very important topic, which is about how do you distribute, or in our terminology, provision your multi-tenant applications in your customers' Azure Active Directory tenants. If you're an ISV, we have a small set of slides on how to promote your applications using the various channels Microsoft has provided for you. We will cover some best practices and caveats that a developer should be aware of when they are developing and distributing multi-tenant applications. And finally, I have added a topic called differences between a multi-tenant app and a B2B, which is business-to-business feature that Azure AD has, as we get a lot of questions from developers about when to use what. And we have we'll provide some prescriptive guidance that should help you make those decisions. So moving forward, this is a fairly advanced topic. We are assuming that you are familiar with developing and integrating single tenant applications with the Azure Active Directory, and you have also integrated web APIs to some extent. You have a fair and working understanding of the permissions and consent framework that Azure AD provides to you. A fair understanding of security groups and app roles is also useful, though not necessary. Also, in this session, we will only cover what we call as modern applications. These applications are the ones that are developed using OpenID OAuth protocols. Applications that we have in the legacy side of things, like linked applications or applications using SAML, more or less follow the same things that we cover here, but not all of them. We will hopefully have a different session to cover those on a different day. So let's get started. So why would one build a multi-tenant application? The most popular audience is software as a service provider who have applications that they want to distribute or sell to multiple customers. For them, the multi-tenant is a very useful platform to automatically distribute and service applications to multiple Azure AD customers. And another use case that we have seen that also is utilized is that a number of organizations have a scenario where they have not one Azure Active Directory tenant, but multiple tenants in which their employees or their users are distributed. And sometimes they have to basically host their line of business applications in all of these tenants, and they don't want to do it separately. And this is where the multi-tenant app development model of Azure AD is very useful for them. So let's start with a brief tour of what is tenancy or what is a tenant in Azure Active Directory. And a tenant in Azure Active Directory, the way we have built it is to represent an organization. If you are a Microsoft or you are a Walmart or you are a Target or you are any organization in Azure or Azure Active Directory way of looking at things, you should be represented by a Azure AD tenant. The tenant would be, if you're a developer and you create a relationship with Microsoft, either if you're signing with Azure or you have bought Microsoft 365, Office 365 licenses, you will end up getting an Azure AD tenant because these are all backed by this platform. And Azure AD tenant contains a lot of things. It has a number of applications. It has devices that your organization has registered with Azure. It has security groups. It has distribution layers. It has users. It has guest users. It has subscriptions and a whole number of things that an organization would own and make use of when in their day-to-day interactions with Microsoft's cloud platform. Tenant also happens to be a virtual security boundary. This is especially important for you to understand if you are working with Microsoft products and Microsoft APIs like Graph, where your application is allowed to operate within only within this boundary that is provided by a Azure AD tenant. So for example, a token issued to an application from Microsoft Graph is only useful, or it can only be used within one tenant and not more than that. Okay. Then the bigger and more important, the most important bit when you are developing multi-tenant applications, understanding what application and service principles are. So in an Azure AD tenant, and application is not necessarily the application that you have running or you have developed or hosted somewhere. Application is represented by what we refer to as an application registration. It's just an information about an application that is hosted somewhere else. It could be some resource in Azure. It could be some resource in AWS or Google Cloud or even on-premise, an on-premise host. But it is created or its registration is created in an Azure AD tenant so that Azure AD becomes aware of it and is able to allow you to carry out operations like signing in users or provide the necessary coordinates to enable it to do various kinds of authentication and authorization. The registration of app in a tenant makes it the tenant a home tenant of that application, or sometimes it's colloquially referred to as a resource tenant of an application. When in Azure AD, all the operations are carried out against what we call as principles. So we have user principles and applications when they need to, when operations or processes have to be carried out against an application, it is carried out on an instance of an application that we refer to as a service principle. Think of service principle as an instance of your application. Why we need it is because it allows us to create principles of a single app registration into multiple tenants. So let's cover that here. So if you have an Azure AD tenant, you will, if you register an application, you will automatically get we will automatically create a service principle of that app registration in that tenant. If you go and look into your enterprise applications blade in the Azure Active Directory portal, you will also see that a lot of service principles for other multi-tenant applications like Microsoft products under Office 365 Exchange, and even third-party multi-tenant applications from other ISVs like Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Box, you would see their service principles present in your AAD tenant. So this is how application and a service principle works in a multi-tenant scenario. So you have created an app registration in your own home tenant, and you can think of it as a blueprint that you have created to generate service principles in the home tenant itself, which is a concrete instance under, as I mentioned, which all the directory operations are performed. And when you enable it to become a multi-tenant app, then your application's service principals will be created in other tenants. We refer to them as host tenants. So the moment you create an application and mark it as a multi-tenant app, the application service principal can be potentially created in every Azure AD tenant out there. Why do we separate application and service principal? Is because it allows separation of duties between a developer and let's say an IT pro. So, for example, when we due to this differentiation, an IT pro or the person who is managing the day-to-day running of an Azure Active Directory tenant can go to a service principal of an application in the enterprise application blade, and they can carry out a whole number of operations which are not necessarily driven by a developer's need, but are driven by the needs of an organization and its policies. So, for example, you can go and disable all sign-ins to an application. So maybe for a time period, the organization does not want to use, a certain product that they have bought from a SaaS application provider. So they can simply disable all users from signing in. They can enable user assignment required, which basically means that only a certain number of users from that tenant can actually sign into that application. They can assign users and groups, so that allows only the users who have been assigned in that organization can sign into that application. They can review the permissions. They can apply conditional access policies. They can enable user provisioning. That is a SCIM concept, if for those you know. They can view the various activity logs of who is signing into that application in that organization. There are more things that are also possible that are, you can look at the entire set of blades that are available on the left side of a service principal in the enterprise application blade, like access reviews. So this allows an application's day-to-day execution in an organization being kept separate from the concerns that a developer has when they are registering an application, and they're more focused towards handling things that the developers care about, like secrets and reply URLs and token encryption and things like that. So this is the basic understanding that I wanted you to develop. I'll just take pause here and see if you have any questions. So I see a couple of questions. How come some apps shown on the app registration page don't show up in the enterprise app page? They should. I will show you during the app registration demo on how you can be sure of that. Sometimes if you delete a service principal, you have to click a button on the app registration to create a new one in that tenant. What is the difference between a service principal and a service account? A service principal is what I have explained here. A service account is an on-prem AD concept. It's a special type of account that is allowed to access resources like file systems, or you can give it access to on-prem services like SQL Server or IaaS. They are not supported as is on Azure AD today, although we have some discussions going on about how to do it. I see application without owners. Is there a way to require this attribute? This is an ask we have in our list of things that we want to cover, which is to make the owner's property or collection mandatory. Today, it is not mandatory, Dean. I am not sure I have an answer for the question from Vittorio about why users defined as owner in enterprise applications tab cannot see logs. That might be a bug. I will take a note and get back to you. Because logs for service principal has been a very recent topic development, so there might be a bug there. For a custom-built non-gallery applications, how can an org register a service principal? So it's a service principal, not a service principal name, Atul. I will cover that in my demo today. Is it possible to have a whitelist of tenants for a multi-tenant app? Yes, and I will also cover that in one of my slides here. Is there a way to find all the apps that grant a specific permission? Dean, that is possible via PowerShell today. I will put it into the chat window after the call. Thank you. Let's move on. So we will now cover the various types of applications and how they are made multi-tenant. So let's start with a multi-tenant app that actually signs in a user. It's the application type I'm covering here is slightly different from the applications that we defined in our documentation, but the reasons will be apparent to you in a few minutes. So how do you make a web application or an application that signs in a user, multi-tenant? So in the portal, you would basically choose one of these two options that are available to you, that are made available to you when you are registering an application. So when you provide a name to your app, you can either choose in the supported account types, accounts in any organization or accounts in any organizational directory, including the Microsoft personal account. Both of these options will mark your application as multi-tenant app. If you have an existing application, you can go to the authentication blade and choose the supported account types and mark it as a multi-tenant there. If you are familiar with working with the manifest of your application, there is an attribute called sign-in audience. You can provide a value of Azure AD multiple orgs or Azure AD and personal Microsoft account as a value to mark your application as a multi-tenant app. So let me just walk through this so that we can see. I can show you how it is done. And additionally, I'll just answer a couple of questions that were asked. So I go to Azure Active Directory and I go to app registrations, create a new app registration. So this is my demo. Now I have chosen this options. These are the two options that you will choose to mark your application as multi-tenant app. Now, when you do this and register your application, I'm skipping a whole lot of steps here for the sake of time. You get an application which is created here. By default, the portal would have created a service principal for this app automatically. In case it hasn't, you can click here on the overview screen. And this is where I have been taken to the enterprise app side of things, and I can see the service principal of my app. Okay, now if I delete this here and I refresh this page, hold on. The link here on the top has changed from managed is a link to the service principal to an option called create service principal. So if you don't see a service principal, just press this button and it will create one for you automatically. Similarly, if you go to the authentication tab of an existing application, you can make the changes from a single tenant to multi-tenant here using these two options, or you can simply go to the applications manifest and make the changes on the sign-in audience attribute of the application. Okay. Yeah, I just decided not to select a redirect URI Ramirez because it was just a demo to show how to mark an application as a multi-tenant. Of course, in a real application, I would be making a lot more of these settings before I start using it. Moving on, just to give a quick summary of how multi-tenant applications differ from single tenant. Now this multi-tenant app can possibly sign in every user in every Azure AD tenant out there. That's the first thing. And your application actually needs to be provisioned in the Azure AD tenant other than the home tenant for it to be used by users in that tenant. And for that to happen, it needs to be taken through what we call as a service principal provisioning process, which we will cover in detail today as well. If you are a developer, I'm going to just cover a few things that you need to change in your code to handle multi-tenant scenarios. One of them being a change in authority. So if you're a single tenant app and you are aware of what an authority is, you use one of these three authority values. Either you use the domain provided by Microsoft when you create an AAD tenant, which is in the form of mydomain.onmicrosoft.com, or you can use a verified domain, a domain that you own, like I'm using kalyankrishna.com, or you can use the tenant ID. Now, all these three basically point to the same thing, which is the tenant where the application resides. This is how you will authenticate users to a single tenant application. When you want to authenticate or enable your applications for signing in users coming from any Azure AD tenant, you have to either use one of these three endpoints. One is called the common endpoint, which is essentially the most popular one, and it allows you to sign in users from any Azure AD tenant and users from Microsoft accounts if you have enabled your app for that. If you want to only sign in users from an AAD tenant, any AAD tenant, but not Microsoft accounts, you can also choose organizations. Or you can use, or if you want to sign in users from Microsoft accounts only, it's a rare case, but sometimes that does happen, then you use the consumers endpoint. Okay, so once you have made that change, you have made your application a multi-tenant one, then you have to basically start. The first change you have to make in your code is to use one of these three authorities as the authority where your application will now redirect users for signing in. If you are an application that is signing in users, you don't really care about token validation. Token validation is carried by is a mandatory requirement for web APIs. But now that you have enabled your application to sign in users from any tenant, you might want to control who and from which tenant users can sign in. This is optional. If you want to do this, you will introduce what we refer to as a token validation. So you can introduce token validation, and I've provided some code as an example here. So this is how you do it in ASP.NET Core, code written in C#. So in ASP.NET Core, our libraries provide you with an event called onTokenValidated. So when a user signs in and the middleware has validated that it's a valid token issued by Azure AD. In this piece of code here, we are basically picking up the tenant ID of the signed in user. We are picking up a list of tenant IDs that we want to work with. This multi-tenant application wants to work with. We don't want to work with all the 3 million Azure AD tenants. We only have a selected list of tenants that we want to allow users to sign in. And if the signing in users tenant ID is not equal to one of those approved tenant IDs in my DB, I throw an exception and do not let the user sign in. So this also answers one of the questions. So yes, if the moment you make your application multi-tenant, you might have to introduce this if you want to control who cannot sign into your application, your new multi-tenant applications. If you are a web API, the steps for making a web API multi-tenant are exactly the same as they were for web application, the users that applications assign in users. But apart from one thing, now web APIs expose an app ID URI, which is essentially the unique URL where the web API expects the tokens by client applications to be acquired for. So this application ID URI, which is this part here in your expose an API blade, this now needs to be a globally unique URI. That's because your applications in any Azure AD tenant, if they have to get an access token issued for your API, the resource or app ID URI needs to be unique across the whole Azure platform. We enforce this by either forcing you to use the verified domain. So for example, in this case, my verified domain, which is kkaad.onmicrosoft.com, is used in the app ID URI, or those of you who have used or used this blade off recently, we generate the app ID URI for you using the API//app ID format. App ID is guaranteed to be unique across all Azure AD tenants, and that gives you an app ID URI which is unique. How do you make those changes? So what changes do you need to make in your multi-tenant web API code? As I said, in a web API code, you do not sign in users. You get access tokens from client applications who have signed in users, obtain an access token for your web API. And now they are sending those access tokens to your web API for token validation. So you would have generally some code like this, again, an ASP.NET Core C# example, where you are validating callers. So in this case, if your web API is open for any Azure AD client in any Azure AD tenant, you will set the validate issuer flag as false. Issuer is a special string that identifies a tenant. So you are essentially telling the token validation logic to, hey, just ignore the tenant IDs. By default, the token validation code will only accept tokens from the web API, where the home tenants applications. But if you want to enable it for everybody, then you need to set this flag as true, as false. Or it could be the other way around. You only want your web API to accept tokens or accept tokens from client applications in a selected few tenants. In this case, you would actually keep the validate issuer flag as true. And in the Microsoft library example that I have provided here, you can provide a list of valid issuers separately to the token validation logic. So this allows your application to remain multi-tenant, but only accept access tokens from client applications that are developed and hosted in these three tenants that you have listed here. You can also further extend the token validation in a web API. So for example, one of the most common scenarios that we see is that you don't want to restrict callers by tenant ID alone. You sometimes want to restrict callers by app ID. So you just want a certain number of client applications to be able to call your web API. In this example, again, C# code, which essentially looks at the app ID or AZP claim, which the client application will have, so which the access token presented by client application will have. If it matches a certain app ID, which will be the app ID of the client, then allow the call to continue or do not let the client applications execute any operations on your web API. Okay. Some more discussions on how a multi-tenant web API differs from a single tenant ones. As I said, yeah, like a multi-tenant web application that signs in users, it can now be provisioned in any Azure AD tenant. The permissions or the scopes, they are delegated and application permissions that you have exposed. They can be consumed by both single tenant and multi-tenant apps now. So if you have once your web API is provisioned in a certain tenant, both single tenant and multi-tenant client applications in that tenant can actually call you. It also requires it to be provisioned. And just for your information, the most popular web API out there is Microsoft Graph. And if you have worked with it and you have developed applications and got permissions and tokens for it, you're essentially interacting with a web API, which is a pure multi-tenant web API. The last type of application that we will cover here, they are referred to as daemon or headless applications. In this case, again, the settings for making them multi-tenant are exactly the same. But there is a difference here when you want to make code changes. Now, common endpoint that we discussed last time is a multiplexer. When a user that's trying to sign into your application, if they land onto the common endpoint, the Azure Active Directory collects their login name or the user principal name, and using the domain that is @yourdomain.com value provided, Azure AD is able to redirect the call to the user's tenant. Now, a headless application would not provide any information which will allow Azure AD to identify a tenant. So if you ever have a reason to actually develop a multi-tenant headless application, which is very rare scenarios anyways, remember that you cannot use the multiplexer. You have to use the tenanted endpoint. So if you are deploying it for various customers, you have to use their tenant IDs or domains in the authority URL. You cannot use common, is because, as I mentioned, Azure AD has no way to figure out which tenant to redirect to. Also, the headless applications are the ones that use client credentials to obtain access tokens. They cannot use common endpoint. And I think I just covered all of this. So we'll just take a quick break to see if you have any questions. Okay, we just have one from Urina. what criteria determines whether I use multi-tenant method versus a B2C instance? A B2C instance is a tenant that is built around an application. So one of the biggest criteria that you should be looking at when you are developing a B2C application is if you have to sign in users from social providers, which is not provided by AAD at all. And if you have requirements to access data for a customer in their Azure AD tenant, like things like if you want to go and look at all the information about all the employees, or if you have requirements to read or send emails, or if you have to read security groups and roles or SharePoint sites. In those cases, a B2C application won't work because a B2C tenant is not owned by an organization. A B2C tenant is owned by the developers themselves. So the general qualifying criteria for this is that if you want to use B2C, you should be, if you want to work with AAD customers or business organizations and have access to their resources, then a B2C does not really is a solution or an answer. You should be developing a multi-tenant applications that use AAD. Service principal is created in exactly the same way. We will cover the service principal creation in a minute. Atul, we have a number of samples on how to get access token for a web API. They are in the, if you go to the link provided on the bottom on this slide, akams./identity platform, you will see samples where we have shown you how to develop a web API and a client application that get access token for it.
I get that. If you allow me a minute, I can ask you a specific question.
Sure.
This was a use case very specific to bot application. That was a botnet tenant of Microsoft, and you know, we were asked to register an application in our tenant, which is going to connect to botnet, botnet framework.com tenant of yours and get the authentication. The question is, if the application has principal in my tenant, has a client ID and secret from my tenant, how is it gaining access to botnet framework.com? And then because it's a multi-tenant app registered in my tenant, how is it getting access to botnet framework.com tenant for which it does not have credential, for which it does not have exposed API? And who's the authentication provider here, botnetframework.com or my own tenant?
In your case, it would be, because it's a headless application, it would be, the tenant would be the botnetframework.microsoft.com, not your tenant. The second example is how it becomes available in that tenant is a scenario that I will cover next in my presentation. Just hold your question and we'll come back to it if you still have open questions on this topic. Okay.
Sure, thanks.
Great. Moving on. The biggest challenge or the most important bit that is overlooked by developers is how to distribute your multi-tenant applications into the various customer tenants or the other tenants than home tenant. So the process is referred to as provisioning in our lingo, but it's generally all about distributing your service principals of your multi-tenant app into other tenants. So as I mentioned, all service principals, all multi-tenant app needs to be first provisioned in the host tenants before they can actually start be available. There are different ways to provision it. Okay, this is a very broad topic. I would ask you to make notes of it and look up on the web if you want to delve deeper into these. We have a lot of documentation for this, so it's more of a summary than a detailed step-by-step direction. So there are different ways to create a service principal of your application in a host tenant. You can either use what we refer to as a query parameter called prompt is equal to admin consent. Those of you who are familiar with authentication protocols, you are allowed to append a prompt parameter with various values like consent or sign in. I forget what it is. There is one for actually forcing a user to sign in again and so on and so forth. One of the parameters is called admin consent. Now, if you put admin consent, then the user signing has to be a tenant admin. And when they sign in, they will be able, the tenant admin signs in to your app, a service principal will automatically be created in that tenant admin's AAD tenant. Similarly, if you don't want the tenant admin to actually sign in first in your app before other users in that tenant can use your app, you can use another parameter called consent. This allows both users and tenant admins to sign in when they sign in to create a service principal of your application in an Azure AD tenant. I will cover all of these options in a little bit more detail in a minute. So the third option, which is also quite popular and is preferred by a lot of tenant administrators, is to simply use the PowerShell command that we have provided, which is called new Azure AD service principal. Or if you care about doing this in a more programmatic way, you would use what we have developed and provided to you and call it the admin consent endpoint. So let's discuss all these four options in a bit more detail. How do you use the consent parameter? This is a brief summary of how the authentication request to an Azure AD is made. Now, if you're using a library like ADOL or MSOL, you don't actually make this, but these libraries provide you with a method called append extra query parameters. And in this, you will add prompt is equal to consent. Now, this is great is because you can use normal users of a tenant. When the first user from an AAD tenant signs into your app and you have this parameter appended to the authentication request, it will end up creating a service principal of your app in that tenant. This is very popular is because let's say you have just provided a web page and anybody can come and sign into your app. What you do is that you append this parameter. This allows you to create a service principal of your app in their tenant. The problem here is that if you are requesting application permissions to, let's say, an API like Graph, this will not work because a normal user, if they are not a tenant admin, cannot consent to application permissions or, in fact, any delegated permissions that require admin consent. So if you are just using a few delegated permissions that do not require admin consent, you should be using it. If you are not, you should not be relying on this parameter to get your service principal provisioned in a tenant. Similarly, in some of the corporate tenants or big enterprise tenants, user consent itself is switched off, which basically means that the users cannot consent for delegated permissions either. In those tenants, this option will not work either. We don't necessarily recommend it is because your sign-in logic code has to take a kind of an unnatural fork to accommodate this extra parameter. How do you tell the users to click sign in and create a service principal or sign into my app? So it is available to you, but I would suggest you use some better options. Also, it will not work if you have a web API or a headless application. It only works for applications that are capable of signing in a user. Prompt is equal to admin consent is a bigger brother of the consent parameter. It allows you to trigger a consent that can only be consented by a tenant admin. It just basically just checks for that role. Again, your sign-in logic needs to take an unnatural fork in your code, and you cannot provision web APIs or headless apps with it. We don't, and it is not supported in AAD v2 anymore, is because it was not really working out the way we expected. It is only available in AAD v1, by the way. We don't recommend it. We recommend you use the admin consent endpoint going forward. The third option is the PowerShell option. Now, PowerShell is preferred for those who are distributing applications via, while connecting to the administrators of that tenant, because usually the admin or IT departments are familiar with PowerShell. And all you do is, again, it's the easiest one to use. You need a tenant admin to execute. Here I have provided one example of how you would go about getting a service principal for your multi-tenant app created. So the new Azure AD service principal provide the app ID. This service principal, this PowerShell command can take other parameters as well. The moment they do it, when this piece of PowerShell command when executed in a PowerShell command console, it would ask the tenant admin to sign in, and it will create a service principal for your app. It is great is because it works for all kinds of applications. It will work for applications that sign in users, your web APIs, and your headless apps. This is highly recommended. If you can get the customers to use it, they should be using it. very straightforward, very clean, and I will explain it a bit later on how it becomes a little bit more difficult if you are trying to get your web APIs and headless applications consented to in an Azure AD tenant. The last option is, and the ones that we want developers to use more, is the admin consent endpoint. It helps you build a programmatic provisioning experience. So instead of even asking a tenant admin to go and download PowerShell and execute a command, you can build a URL like the one we have provided you here. So there are links in this deck that we will share with all of you after the session, where you can use this to actually build pages with links like the one that I provided. Hey, click here to admin consent your product in your Azure AD tenant. So this helps you provide links that let's say in your product page, you can say, hey, buy my product, and then you can build a link like this and send the user to that link, which basically means that the user has to sign in. They have to be a tenant admin, by the way. And the moment they sign in, and a service principal is created in their tenant of your application. Requires a tenant admin. It works for applications, web APIs, and headless applications with a little bit of caveat that I'll cover as well. It helps you remove the provisioning concerns away from the main code base that you have. I provided a link for you here in the slide itself. It's also provided at the end of the slide. So let me just show you how the experience with admin consent endpoint looks like. So just bear with me. So here I have, this is my home directory, and I have a multi-tenant web app called this. So this is an application registration. If I go to the authentication tab, it is marked as a multi-tenant application. Now I'm in the directory called KKAAD. Now what I want to do is to basically create a service principal using the admin consent endpoint in my other tenant, which is KKMSFTAD. So I go to Azure Active Directory, and if I go to Enterprise Applications and I search for this, there is no service principal for this application available. Just making sure. Yep, it's not available. So here is an example of how one builds the admin consent URL. So this is an admin consent URL that I have created. It has the client ID of my multi-tenant app, which is essentially BB28B. And I have a redirect URI. You have to have a page that will handle the experience after the admin has consented, and a couple of extra parameters. So I'm going to just take this, go to my other tab, and paste it. If you see, it has asked me to sign in as the administrator. When I sign in, it will ask for the permissions that the app requires in that tenant. In that case, this application requires permissions to read all users' full profiles. And once I do that, you can ignore these pages because it's a problem with our sample. If I now go back and refresh the Enterprise Applications blade, see this? Oh, hold on. Give it another second. A service principal has been created here. So if I go to the app registration screen of this directory, there is no app by this name. It only exists as a service principal in this application, and now the developers can sign in. So this is how provisioning using admin consent endpoint works. Again, depending upon your scenario, you should be using one of these. We would prefer if you use the PowerShell or the admin consent endpoint. Before I take questions, there are a couple of more caveats I want to cover here. The first thing you have to understand also when you are provisioning your multi-tenant apps in the other tenants is that you have to care about the provisioning. So let's say if you have an application that is dependent on a web API, which is also a multi-tenant API. So you would go to the API permission screen, set up the permissions there. In that case, you have to make sure that the web API that your web app is dependent on is provisioned before the web app itself. So in this example, I am first provisioning the web API, and then I'm provisioning the web app, which is dependent on this web API. Just keep that in mind. You have to basically do the same thing for admin consent endpoint as well. Even if you are aware of dynamic or incremental consent with web APIs, just make sure that you still do it. It will not be automatically provisioned for you. Now, this has become a common enough ask. We are working on a feature called app bundling, where using the admin consent endpoint, the application, multi-tenant application itself, or all of the other dependent multi-tenant web APIs that are part of that application can be bundled together and consented in one go. But today you have to take this multi-step approach to provision your applications and its dependencies in a customer tenant. If your application is dependent on a Microsoft API like Graph or Azure Service Management, you don't have to worry about provisioning them. They are guaranteed to be available in every Azure AD tenant. You just have to worry about getting your multi-tenant application provision. Finally, if you are a web API or a headless app, you have to be careful that it can only be provisioned by default using PowerShell, or it uses a Microsoft Graph command behind the scenes. The reason is that if you see, the admin consent endpoint requires a user to sign in and thus requires a web page to actually handle a successful or a failure response of that operation. So what happens is that if you want to enable your web API or your headless application to be provisioned by the admin consent endpoint, then you would have to add a redirect URI first. That is not just adding a redirect URI, you will have to basically add a page or a controller in your web API to handle the responses, which is not something that is desired or could be something that you don't want to do either. But unfortunately, we don't have a way around it, is because the admin consent endpoint operation executes within a browser, and we need to have a page to send a response to. Also, if your web API and headless app has to be, because they have to sign in a user, you have to add this extra permission called user.read, which is, unless added, would not allow your headless applications or web API to sign in users. You are using confidential client or client credentials. Sorry, you're using the client credentials to get an access token issued to your app only. But and you don't really need these. You didn't need these two options. But to enable admin consent endpoint, you have to make these two changes in your application for it to be able to be successfully admin consented using the admin consent endpoint by your end customer. Now, just because you added a user.read permission does not mean that you cannot add permissions for other permissions for other APIs. You can have as many as possible, but yeah, user.read is required for admin consent endpoint to function correctly. So taking a break here and asking for any questions. When your service principal is created, you can, by default, when the user is signing in from a different tenant, it will use the same keys that you have used in your home tenant. But a user can add extra credentials as well. But that requires you to change the authority and things like that, but up to you if you want to use it. How do you implement a lifecycle management of service principals or applications? So we have added features like access reviews. We have provided you with some PowerShell commandlets to look for things like last sign-in date of a service principal. And depending on that, you can develop scripts which you can use to disable service principals and manage those that you don't need. What is the unverified link below an app name means? How do we verify it? Please look up and read up on publisher verification. So if your application is not using a verified domain name, then we basically mark this as unverified, and there are some more caveats to it. But if you could do a web search, you can answer that. Okay. Couple of other items that I will quickly cover here. If you are a ISV, we have various means available for you to promote your SaaS applications. The first thing we would want you to do is to brand your application correctly so that the end customers, when they obtain it, it looks like a more professional work. I provided you some links here that you can use. We have Azure Active Directory App Gallery available for you. If you have used the Enterprise Apps Plate and you say add an application, applications in the gallery are listed below to the tenant administrators and users. If you want your application to be present there, consider provisioning with consider adding your application to the Azure AD App Gallery. When you get your app added to the app gallery, it's also available in the marketplace for those who are looking for applications to buy. How do you go about it? We have this link provided here where you can, if you're an ISV and you want your application to be hosted in the app gallery, please go ahead and make a request here. One more very important part, if you are developing a multi-tenant app, there are a few best practices and caveats that I want to cover here, is because these might come to bite you on a later date. Carefully choose your permissions. If you're asking for permissions for Microsoft Graph and asking for permissions which are very high privilege, like directly.readwrite.all, not all customers will be happy to grant them those permissions to your app during the admin consent process. So just learn to work with the least amount of permissions your app can work. If you are using security groups in your apps, we don't advise them to be used in multi-tenant applications because they are not guaranteed to be available in every Azure AD tenant. If you have to implement authorizations, use app roles instead of groups. This is very tricky. So once you have developed a multi-tenant app and it has been provisioned into 1 or 1 million Azure AD tenants, you don't have a way to find out that number. What you can instead do is when the users sign into your application, please grab the tenant ID and save it in some database behind the scenes. That is how you will figure out how many tenants your application is being used today, because you cannot really read the data into a tenant unless you have the permission for it, and that is not always readily provided by tenant administrators. Also, use a library like MSAL or a proper third-party OpenID verified library, because token caching in multi-tenant apps requires some special considerations. We have covered them into our samples and MSAL library. But if you are working off raw OpenID protocol or NOAuth protocol, you might not be as successful in managing, following the best practices for token caching. Also, if you're using directory extensions, just remember that the extensions would not be the same in every AD tenant. Just putting it there so that you're aware of it, that you might have to look at this option carefully. Another part that you should be very well aware of is how do you propagate changes to your multi-tenant app in your host tenants. Now, if you make any changes to an app after it has been provisioned in other tenants, the changes you make to your applications, like changes to redirect URI permissions, they are only going to be reflected in the service principal of the home tenant. We do this is because if you are a very popular application that is used by thousands of Azure AD tenants, a simple change that, let's say, which requires a tenant admin to consent for a permission will result in all of these users across thousands of these tenants not being able to use the app because now it requires the admin to consent again. So we don't delete your service principals in other AAD tenants today. What you have to do is that you have to basically reach out to your customers, and that's why I had advised you to capture the tenant ID, so you have a way of at least finding out which tenants have the service principal of your application, and then you have to ask them to basically perform the tenant, the admin consent again to create a newer version of your service principal. Finally, since we are running out of time, I'm just going to quickly run through this. Some of the folks have asked, when to use B2B, or if B2B is a better option than multi-tenant and whatnot. So I've just covered, have a slide here that can help you make a few decisions. If you are use B2B, and B2B is essentially a feature where you can invite users from other tenants as guests in your tenant and let them sign into your application, and that allows you to address a larger set of user population than just the employees of, let's say, one organization. We agree some of the advantage of using B2B is that, yes, programming model is simpler. You are a single tenant application. You don't have to worry about provisioning, propagating changes, and so on. You don't have to go and extend token validation to filter the number, the tenants that you want the users to sign in from, or applications, client applications who are allowed to obtain access tokens. And it actually only works very well if the number of users is small. The reasons are why you should not be using it is if you want to address a very large population of users, B2B is not an option. The other option is that if you end up inviting, let's say, millions of users in your AAD tenant through B2B, it will actually cost you more because after a certain number, AAD tenant stops being a free one. Similarly, if a user leaves their home tenant, or let's say an employee leaves the job and their user account is disabled or deleted, B2B instances or the guest user instances of those users are not propagated to your tenant. Similarly, if you want to access data for a user and an organization from using an API like Microsoft Graph, in a case of B2B users, you will not be able to get an access token in the user's home tenant's context. You will always get an access token for your tenant's context, and sometimes that leads to some problems that it's not clear till quite late. Similarly, tenant admins for your home tenant might not be very happy about millions of users showing up in their tenant, and the tenant admins of some of the corporate or enterprises are hesitant about having their users becoming guest users in other Azure AD tenants as well. We are building a feature where they might just block it altogether. So just keep this in mind that yes, it's simpler, sometimes okay if you just have a few hundred users to deal with, but it will not work for you for all the various scenarios. So just keep this, refer to this slide so that you can make a decision. Also, if you are using guest users in your multi-tenant app, if you're using one of these multiplexer endpoints like common organizations or consumers, just remember that in your tenant, you have both a home user and a guest user. So, and if they're assigned to, let's say, security groups or app roles in a certain tenant where your application is executing, what happens is when you take a user to the common endpoint, the user is then redirected to their home tenant to sign in, which basically means that the policies that are basically supposed to execute in the service principal of a customer tenant do not get executed. So you will not get the group assignments or app role assignments of guest users if you are signing them on the common endpoints. Now, this is just a behavior by design. If you have such strict scenarios where you have to apply conditional access policies or use group assignments or app roles for guest users, unfortunately, today you have to use the tenanted endpoint for that. So for certain important customers of yours, you might want to host a separate web page which allows a tenanted authority to be used behind the scenes to sign in users in that organization. I have dropped a few sample tokens which are issued for users when for multi-tenant apps and users who are guest in a tenant. If you are going to go and change your code, you will find that this is where the various claims that we have discussed in this call remain. So for example, the first token is if the user and application are in the same tenant, the issuer claim and tenant ID is the same. If there is a B2B users from another tenant, the issuer and the tenant ID will remain the same, but the token will have an extra claim named IDP, which will point to the home tenant. And if it's an external B2B users from Gmail or a Microsoft account user, the IDP will have google.com or live.com value in it. If you are a multi-tenant application, when your multi-tenant application executes in two different orgs, this is an example of how the tokens are issued. So while the audience, which is the app ID, remains the same, you will see that the tenant ID is different in both the cases. So just provided you here for reference, so you can lead on them to make decisions in your code. Marcos, do you have a roadmap, the feature restricting the target tenant IDs? We don't have anything we are doing today in the portal itself, but I have provided you can extend token validation and implement it in your code. Okay, the deck has a few references and samples for you to go through. This is a link of all the various community calls that we carry out on a regular basis. If you want a free AAD tenant with a lot of goodies, there is a link that I provided to join the developer program and get a fully loaded Azure AD tenant with actual licenses of Microsoft Office. We have provided you some resources to go through our docs tools and reach out to us via different means. And yeah, thank you, everyone. If you have any remaining questions, we will publish the slides along with in a link to the recorded session.